Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the World Wide Web. Oh, just kidding. And welcome, Ryan, to
Josh.
the Vitalogy podcast.
Good to see you, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's good. It's so good to see you out there. I guess I can't see you, but I'm glad that we are here, and I want to see you. I would love for you to say hi in the comments. If you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, we're glad to have you. Say hi to us in the comments. And we'd love to involve you in this. If you're joining us on the podcast feed, I'm so glad you found us. And it's an honor to do this with you. Ryan, I hear from so many people throughout the week who listen. In fact, while we were gone a few weeks, there were some people who were like saying, "When's the next one coming?"
Yeah,
And
that's been fun.
They were glad to have us back.
Been really cool. I know.
Which is cool.
Very cool.
So I'm
glad to be back. Even though we work together, we don't see each other nearly enough. So
I know.
At least we get an hour together.
I know.
During the day.
I know.
And that's always fun.
I saw you driving home from dropping your kids off this morning. So I feel like I've seen you today.
I know. But that's about the extent of it, right?
That really is. Yes.
Yeah. So it's good to be together.
It is, man. It is. And good to talk about some important things.
Definitely. And hey, let me just say, if you have other questions that don't pertain to this message specifically, you can send them to questions@efcc.org, or you can post them in the comment section on either YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching. But we would love to engage with you.
Absolutely. And we're ready for your questions now. We don't know what they are, but we'd love to dive into them and do our best. That's just something both of us really enjoy. So we encourage you to right now even think about the hardest question you can think of.
And then ask Josh.
There you go. And I will say, I don't know.
There you go.
I'll ask Ryan.
Yes.
So that'll be how that will go. So, but in the meantime, until we get that just juicy question that we want to dive into, we're going to dive into all sorts of pivots.
Yeah.
Plans, Pivots, and Providence was the title of this last week's message.
This was. And then we had a week of Plans, Pivots, and Providence.
I know. Yeah. That title, you had to choose that title like a while back. Like, okay,
long while.
This series in particular, our creative people, Nate leading that team has done such a great job with bumper videos.
The packages they put together for each message has been awesome. My goodness.
In the series, if you join us live or watching online, you'll see that before each video, we call it a bumper video. It's just a little kind of intro, makes a nice transition as well, and time for you to get on stage.
Yeah.
So it's a very useful thing.
Yeah. But I usually pray over our congregation as they're watching.
Oh, that's much more spiritual than me.
I just try to look over and
this guy's like a real pastor. It really is. That's a brilliant idea. It's never crossed my mind. I'm sorry, everybody. I really am. I'm thinking about what's next. That's awesome. I'm sorry. Man, this is good. It's also so these videos are each custom to each sermon.
Yeah,
which is an impressive amount of work that they've done to do that.
And Sarah McDowell has done a great job with them. She's been the main actress in all of them, and just awesome.
Yeah,
so good.
So we had to turn these in way in advance of what the topic's going to be, and they've gone all out.
Yeah,
it's been really cool. So all that to say is that sermon title. That happened a long time ago.
Yep.
Now, and I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised.
No, because I sort of joked and said at one of the services, I said, probably would have applied any week of the last 70 weeks.
Yeah,
but
maybe
it definitely applied this week because we had somebody on our staff get come down with a COVID positive test, and a number of our other staff out on quarantine, and we had to postpone a baptism, and
oh yeah, I know.
Pivots.
Yep, that was a big week of pivots, and it feels like a lot of. I mean, it feels like everything to do anything these days it requires like a pivot mindset. Maybe is what it is, that you're always thinking. We're going to plan this, but we also have to have like a contingency plan, like a plan to pivot, to decide, to go a different direction.
And my guess is that regardless of what line of work you're in or, place in life, you've experienced that over the last year and a half as well.
Yeah.
Listening or watching audience. Yeah. So,
Oh, a life of
part of life these days.
Yeah. Now, and so this is an interesting pivot. I think in the devotion this morning, Scott Smith wrote a devotion, and it was about, he didn't use the word pivot. Whiplash. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That so much pivots can turn into whiplash.
Yes.
I think that was a great connection.
Amen for that.
That's right. That too much of this changing can feel like whiplash. And I know, as I was reading his devotional, I was like, amen to that.
Yeah.
That is the truth there. And I don't know about you guys out there, but you've probably felt like there's been a lot of change. And that's probably because there's been a lot of change.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
And not like, it's not like, you didn't sign up to say, hey, I want to have my second year, or my, not even full second year.
First.
It was your first year within 7 months, 8 months?
6 months.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah.
6 months to have a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah.
To then have to have so much change.
Yeah.
Right. Did you read all the books that told you not to change anything for 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
And you were like, man,
I'm like,
you
all
were
right,
excited about that. I can do that.
Let's
and then God said,
Yep, there we go. Good luck not changing anything when COVID hits, right?
And
it's like,
instead now you have
survive.
to change everything.
Everything.
Man.
Yep.
So
this message definitely hit home for me.
Yeah, you relate to
it was
David
very first person. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to go into this a little bit, because I was kind of thinking that this has to relate to you quite a bit. That here, this is as if this is like David's dream, and I'm guessing you had some dreams.
I did
as well, and just like his, I think you said this was like a leader who I'm sure you could probably repeat how you said it, that had his vision that didn't come true.
Yes.
And do you feel like that leader sometimes?
Oh man. I said, this is a song about a passionate leader who doesn't get to execute on a plan that he had, a seemingly good plan, a purely motivated plan, a plan to do something good for God. And God went, nope,
no,
not going to do that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
David. Now, I think the most fascinating part about this psalm is that that's not explicitly stated.
Yes, that is so interesting.
So this was like, I think of all the Psalms of Ascent that I've had the chance to do, this was the hardest one for me to preach.
Oh yeah.
Because like I said in the message, you had to dig into the nuance and subtlety of what was going on in the text, and behind the text, really, in order to figure out what the point of the song is.
Yeah.
And I do think that what I preached is indeed the point of the song. It's just not explicitly stated right in there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And so because I want to ask you about that. I think there's some there is super interesting, that whole concept. But to get there, you talked about behind the music, which I think that's as if to say, like, there's what you see on the paper.
Yep.
And then there's what's behind it. You could talk about it, what's in between the lines, even, right? Like what's behind what was going on there. That's really, in order to really understand this, you got to get to that. But of course, I think you win the prize for talking about the most music so far, right? We have this is a series about playlists, so
I hope
I hope people are
putting connecting those dots that, Orion's referencing songs each week,
Yes.
and our other pastors are too, because it's called Road Trip
Playlist. Exactly. Exactly. I hope so, but
if not,
I got 3 songs.
that's on them.
Right? We got Counting Crows.
Yeah.
We started with, right?
Yeah.
We got
Round Here.
Round Here. We should probably sing that.
It's one of their best songs, and it's always
Round Here.
Totally. Always stand up straight.
But we're singing that, and there's no reason, like you said about
what's the song about?
Yeah, that's
I actually went back and just watched a YouTube clip of Adam Durst talking about that song, and even afterwards, I was like, "Yeah, I still don't really get what the song's about, but whatever, it's cool." Did you ever watch Storytellers?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
so good.
Yeah, so good. And I was a Counting Crows fan. So this really hit home. At least 2 of the 3. I'm just kidding.
You don't even need to tell me which one didn't. I know.
Oh yeah, you too, man. Oh, Sunday Bloody Sunday.
That song's got a story.
That
right? So many of their songs do. I think of like Pride in the Name of Love, and but this one was. I felt like, just to pick a song that has a distinct story, that if you don't have the story, you don't know the song, right?
Yeah,
and you can know all the lyrics and you can sing along, but if you don't know what's behind the music, what's behind the lyrics, you have no idea what Bono's singing about.
Absolutely. I remember first hearing what that song was about and thinking like, oh, that makes me feel so much better about singing it. Because there's something weird about singing about a Bloody Sunday, right?
Yeah.
You know, when you don't understand what the song is about.
Yeah.
But once you do, it just makes more sense.
It makes more sense.
And so that's the same idea with the psalm.
Yes.
That once you understand, a little bit more of what's behind it, then it makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
And yet there's some questions I have about this psalm, about why it's in there.
Me too.
Now,
and I mean, my questions, I don't know what yours are, but mine revolve around, like, why do they make it seem like David built the temple?
Yes.
Right? Like, they know the history.
Yes.
And is this I don't think it's revisionist history on their part, in the sense of trying to be misleading. I actually do think that the point is the I wills in verses 3 through 5, and the I wills contrasted with the I wills of verses 13 to 18.
Yeah.
And we live in this tension of who will. Is it I will, or is it he will? And are we gonna hold on to our plans or his promises? And I think that's what the song is all about.
Yeah. I think it's a great observation, because I really, the more I see it, I mean, I feel like that's the only way to look at it. But one of the questions I had, you studied this, you probably, as oftentimes in studying these, we kind of you can run across like other interpretations, more of like there's always someone out there that's going to be a bit more critical, have a critical interpretation of this. Did you find?
Oh, definitely.
What do they say about why that is?
Yeah, they don't. The ones that I would say go a different direction than I did never address the fact that David didn't actually do this.
Oh, interesting.
So they just talk about his intentions. He was passionate. Even Eugene Peterson, in his great book, Long Obedience in the Same Direction, for him, this whole chapter was about obedience.
Interesting.
And I was going, Eugene, like, okay, like David at times was obedient, right? And certainly in this psalm, it was like, or this part of David's life, he was faithful and passionate, but he wasn't. When the first part talks about building the temple, he's not being obedient there.
Yeah.
He was being zealous. He's being passionate. So that was one. Josh Moody, in his book, Journey to Joy, talked about when he really used Psalm 132 as a way to engage God when it doesn't seem like his plan is going to come to fruition.
Interesting.
And so he, in my opinion, didn't engage the first half of the text
Yeah.
that really talks about David's plan.
Yes.
And what he talked about was the fact that they often read this psalm post-exile, looking
Yeah.
at a destroyed temple.
See, that's the key right there, that they still use this psalm.
Yes.
Because I assume maybe that Eugene Peterson in his mind is dating this in that very small window between when David says this,
Yeah, probably.
and then, I mean, but how
he
long was
doesn't
that?
make a specific, in at least in that book,
Yeah.
because that book's more, I would say, devotional
Yes,
level
absolutely.
than really real scholastic commentary. And I would even say it ventures into midrash a little bit to sort of expand on the text and
Yeah.
sort of use it as a storytelling platform.
Yeah.
Jumping
off point.
A
right?
jumping off point. Yeah. And so that's his style in the book. But he, in my opinion, didn't really engage the fact that, well, David makes these bold plans and claims, which the song recounts. I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to enter my house until I've built you a house, until you find rest. And he just doesn't get to do any of that. So sorry, what were you?
So because you could place it there, like in between, as if this was his intentions and as if this is what he was going to say, but then history changed it. We all know that, but the question still becomes, why did they keep it?
Yeah, and that's a pretty small window.
Very small
right?
window.
Like one night.
And
he wrote this. He's like, this song's gonna be written about David on this night.
That's what it'd have to be. But
Wow.
even then, wouldn't they, as soon as that changed the next day, they would probably be like, yeah, let's not keep that one, right?
Yep.
Because no one assumes that this is every single psalm that was ever written.
Oh,
right?
No way.
Like
No,
there was
selected for a variety of reasons, but specific reasons.
Yes, it's a curated, right?
Yeah.
It's put together. It's the collected ones. It's even the best ones.
Yeah.
Right. Of all the psalms, and most likely a lot of these were kind of oral. So they were sung, and they were probably even tweaked when they were sung some. And then David and others put them together and actually wrote them down at some point.
Yeah.
And this is one. So this would you necessarily say this would have been written down and put in this book well after, maybe even hundreds of years after that event.
Yep.
It would have been collected in these psalms. So they definitely knew that David didn't do this.
Yeah, you wonder if there were ever any like transcribal inserts, right? In between verse 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Right. Where we all know he didn't get to do this.
Yeah.
But David's plans failed, but God redirected him, or, a number of things that could have just been put in there. But God was more interested in his promise than David's plan, because it just goes straight from verse 10 right into verse 11 that talks about the promise that God does give to David.
Yes.
And that is true and does come to pass.
Yes. And yet this kind of, I didn't know this does kind of show
there's a break.
There's a huge, there's a slightly larger break in my Bible than others, but in a sense that this is a story of the Old Testament, in a sense that what they thought was one thing, and God answered that answered all of the prophecy, all the things, just in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
Not just slightly, in a different way than what they had wanted.
I mean, this is the story of the Messiah, right?
Absolutely is.
Yeah, it's not what they have in the picture in their mind of what a Messiah will be, and yet it's exactly what humanity needs.
And actually, it's interesting that if you just take the Old Testament without knowing any of the New Testament, you'll have some hints. You'll definitely have hints. In fact, there were people who saw the hints and saw it well, but there's not a lot of them.
Not a lot.
Right? No, I mean, Simeon is one of the key examples, right? He saw the hints, and he was looking for Jesus. And then there's some, random people from the East, who weren't even a part of that, part of that tradition loosely, but not Jewish, right?
Well, they go to the scribes and go, hey, where's the Messiah going to be born? And they're like, Bethlehem. I've always wondered, why they didn't ask, why are you asking? They're like a few miles away and they never get there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Zoroastrians are hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
And they arrive.
And they get there, right?
Anyway,
but you've got a few of these examples of people who put it together. And so the same is true about the between the Old Testament and New Testament. There's not an explainer.
all right.
This psalm doesn't have the explainer. And so what you are doing is filling in those gaps, is telling the music behind the music.
Yeah. Yep. In between the
In
lines.
scenes,
Yeah. I like that way that you put it.
Yeah.
And I do think that 2 Samuel 7 text with the Davidic Covenant that recounts the backstory of really what's in between verses 10 and 11 is just such a great passage. It's this contrasting of houses and what David plans on doing versus what God promises to do. And I can remember I actually got to teach that text one Christmas Eve. It shows up. It's in the lectionary under Advent.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's Advent B, the verses that go along with that, or maybe it's A, I forget. But that text fell on Christmas Eve. And so I had made a commitment that year. I'm just going to teach right through the lectionary. And it was passages that I wouldn't normally choose to teach on during Advent season. And yet it was a really good challenge homiletically. But that passage falling on Christmas Eve, I was like, what do I do with that Christmas Eve? Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely not something you choose, but I'm sure it ended up being
oh man, I loved the study. And I went, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, David plans on doing all these things for God. And yet God's way more interested in what he's going to do through David, and what he does through David brings about the Messiah. And that's what Christmas is all about. It's not about what we construct for God. It's about what God does through incarnation for us.
I wonder if Psalm 132 is the reason that passage is a Christmas psalm in a sense.
Maybe,
because that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm thinking like the fact that you preach that at Christmas time might have been some of the reason why you noticed that here,
maybe
in a way that I don't know, hasn't been done a lot. That's just one of the interesting things.
Which is always dangerous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the danger he's referring to is when you if you find an interpretation. This is how it's always been explained to me.
Yeah, in seminary.
In seminary and things like that. If you find an interpretation that you're the only one that's ever thought that, then change your interpretation.
Your first thought should be, I'm a heretic.
I'm a heretic. Yeah. I'm probably wrong. Now,
I'm not the only one though.
Yeah.
There was a number.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it's a little different with the Psalms. That I'll say that. Yeah. That really applies a little bit more to more didactics, more like what do we say? More analytics. Stories are different, and the Psalms are poetry. There's just so much more to it. So we don't.
And nobody's going to argue.
Yeah.
Well, David actually did build the temple.
That's a good point.
Okay.
No, he did not.
No one's going to argue this promise in 11 and 12 is the Davidic Covenant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like all of those, like for me, at least when I'm going to a text to try to study it, like that to me is what's really important. So really what after that, you're just tying together the homiletical ideas, the hermeneutics and the story behind the story. I don't think is debated at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what you do with that from a preaching standpoint, that's where it's more art than science.
Yeah. 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 So the difference, hermeneutics is the study of the scripture, right? Or the homiletics is the practice of preaching.
Yeah.
So putting it together in a sermon, it is a little bit different. And that's one of the things that has struck me in teaching the Psalms in particular, is it relies a little bit more on the homiletic side than it does on the study side. So a lot of these are fairly straightforward in some senses.
Totally.
Now, this I wouldn't call straightforward. But I think what you're getting at is that there's not much a debate about the meaning of these words.
Right. That's correct.
The debate has to do with, now what do we do with it?
Yep.
And that's a homiletic question or preaching question, or a practical theology question, to know, like, what does this mean for me?
Exactly.
Instead of it just, what does it mean? Because I'm sure I don't know.
Well, I mean, think of how much you could miss what it means by just asking that question. What is the text on the page mean? David is intent on building a house for God. I'll find a place for the Lord, a dwelling. David is intent on that.
Yeah.
Then they tell a story about bringing the ark back, right? That's what the text says. Let your priests be clothed with righteousness and let your saints shout for joy. That's actually a quote from the dedication of the temple.
Is that right?
Yeah. So the temple that David didn't build, and they don't say it anyway. But yeah, so just purely on the hermeneutic side of things, arise, O Lord. I mean, this is a direct quote. 8 verses 8 through 10 are a direct quote from the dedication of the temple.
Really? So the temple that David's son Solomon built. 20, 30 years later.
You got it.
40 years. I don't know how many years later, but it was quite a bit later.
Way later. Yep.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so like you can go to the hermeneutics of it and go, yep, that's what it said, but never the homiletic question, or even just the application question in general. If you're just doing like a Bible study, would be, well, why jump from 10, honoring David, to 11, this promise, without talking about the fact that 1 through 10 didn't actually get done the way that David wanted.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. Your sons keep my covenant. Because that covenant happens. The covenant happens when he finds out he can't do it.
Correct.
Right?
It all flows out of, it's in 2 Samuel 7, verses 1 through 3.
Yes.
He goes to Nathan. He's like, hey, I got this idea, really good idea. God's been backpacking. I'd like to build him a house, right? A permanent house. And Nathan's like, great idea. Nathan goes to sleep, has a dream. God says, nope, tell David, I'm going to build him into a house. Yeah. He's not going to build me a house. Now we find out later that David was not able to build, or not told that he could build God a house, because he was a man of war, and his son was going to do that rather than him. So there's reasons there, but the reasons aren't a part of the Psalm necessarily. And
oh man, so that gets, man, I wonder if I'd be super interested to know how the rabbinic teachers and how the Jewish scholars interpret this. Is David a reference for his line? So
it certainly could be.
Yeah.
Although these are references to David.
So there you go.
Yeah. And specifically,
the mighty one of Jacob.
The hardships he endured, right? I will not enter my house. And this is all what he is saying. Said. Yeah.
And so it just, so interesting. So now, but this gets at the point that they're writing this, and I mean, they're writing these are brilliant people writing this stuff and keeping it down. So they want us to struggle with this and to process this and to do exactly what you did.
Yeah. I love the way that, I think it's Tim Mackey from the Bible Project talks about hyperlinks.
Yes.
Right. Things that as you sit with the text, like that the scriptures aren't intended just to be either like passages just poached out and looked at, or it's supposed to be read and reread and reread and digested to where you eventually start going, I think that's a wink or a nod to this thing that's happening over here. Right.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that that's the way that this is intended to function.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to see this without a reference to that anymore, right? Yeah. I mean, it's clear. In fact, I kind of want it to have that in the title now,
right?
Yes, go look over.
Right. Read 2 Samuel 6 and 7 before you read this psalm.
Yes, it's needed.
It could be hazardous to your interpretation if you do not.
If you don't, because if you just read this, you would think that David built the thing.
Yep. Yeah, you sure would.
This is David's temple now.
But I do think that there's something humbling about acknowledging that your greatest king didn't get to execute on his most passionate plan. And so something about, if you know that backstory, when you sing that song, there's something about the way that you're viewing yourself also in light of this great one who didn't get to do what he wanted to do.
Yes.
That God had something different for him. And I think it should cause us to ask the question, man, if David didn't get to execute on his most passionate plan, maybe we won't either.
And it gets to the third song.
I guess
that gets to your third song that you brought up, right? We mentioned two songs.
Third song.
The third
I'm
song.
guessing it's the one you didn't like.
No, I thought it was done very well. No, it's a great song. The
song is by Garth Brooks. Yep. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers.
Unanswered prayers. Yeah, right.
Yep.
So the idea though that to notice and recognize, to sing songs about your leader that had a vision, that wanted to do something, but God did something else.
Right.
It's the emphasis then is on the second part.
It is.
It's saying like, this is great, but this is what God did.
Yeah.
Is this to say that, and I think it's a great point that we have all of our ideas of what we want to be done. We are praying for things, we want things, and yet sometimes what happens, maybe all the time, what happens is so much better.
Yeah.
What God does is a lot better.
And I did want to engage the tension of there are times where we get to see that better.
Yeah.
Right. And we get to go, oh, Lord, yeah. Thanks that I didn't marry that person, or thank you that I didn't, whatever.
Absolutely.
Fill in the blank. Didn't get that job. Didn't whatever. And there's sometimes where we can like celebrate that and praise God for his providence in stopping our plan. And then I did want to just acknowledge that there are some plans that, even to echo some of what David was probably thinking, God, this would lead to your glory. This would be for the good of people. God, this is something that's deep within my heart and a strong desire. I think of praying for healing for somebody and thinking, God, this would bring you so much glory. And then even once they died, thinking, God, you can raise the dead. Like think of the way that these people would be shaped by this event. Like, why wouldn't you do this? And having confidence that he would, and him saying no. Right. So I did want to say, yep, sometimes God says no because it's something better. And then sometimes God says no, and we have to sit with the questions of why.
Yeah. And sometimes we may never know.
No.
I don't know that we're promised that we'll know. I think we hope that one day, even if it's not here, that we'll know. But I don't know that we're promised that.
No.
Because there's some things that are just awful. They're just hard.
Yep.
And I feel like you're getting at this idea. I don't know the exact quote, but that sometimes we just don't know. We're not going to know why. We want it better. We want it differently. I've gotten better plans at times, right? It's not the way I want it to go. And yet I feel like that this is something that even Jesus relates to.
Oh yeah.
With us.
That's good. Yep.
He had it. He had better plans in a sense, right? In fact, he even told God his better plans at one point, and he asked God to change his plans. There, the Garden of Gethsemane, before he went to the cross, knowing that that's what he needs to do. Jesus said, "If there's a better way, like take this cup from me." And yet he said that thing that I think what you were getting at here is that the I wills. And the God saying, no, I will. And I think that's what Jesus was getting at, that not my will, not the I will, but your will be done.
Absolutely.
And that's where he changes everything. But it doesn't take away the fact that he wasn't like, he wasn't super excited about going to the cross right there, right? I mean,
well, and I think that there's probably a word for us in there, right? An
yeah.
encouragement for us that because we let go of our plans doesn't mean we always do so with excitement. It doesn't mean we're always like pumping our fists going, oh yeah, something better's around the corner. I mean, there are times where we let go of our plans because we run up against unthinkable situations and, we run up against God's no. And we're forced to let it go rather than we joyfully choose. I think the posture of obedience and submission is to hold it open-handedly anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but I sort of find myself like my hands closing around plans that I think align with the heart of God, that align with my desires, that I see no negative outcomes for. And I'm going, why not, Lord?
Yeah.
Boom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Even what I think is often an open hand is not quite as open as I thought, right?
Yes.
There's times when I think I'm wide open and I'm okay to let God do something, but really I've got a pretty good grip around that.
Yeah. And that's why it struck me that, this is one of the things I said this weekend, but that faith is most fully displayed when we trust God when he says no.
Right. That's right.
And that, man, it's easy to trust God when he says yes, but I don't even know if we know our motives well enough to know whether we're actually trusting God or ourselves in that moment. It's when he says no that we get to see, do I actually have faith in him? And that's what I meant by most fully displayed. It's like, it's when it comes into fruition the most. It's like, it's out in the open. God, you're still my God, even though you've said no to my desires. So the God of me that gets to choose the plan and the blueprint is clearly not God, right? You are, and I'm going to trust you.
I think that's a great point. I mean, go back to Jesus. That was not admittedly not his desire, not his plan. And yet presumably, I mean, he's Jesus. He still could have called down angels, right?
Sure.
To take him off of the cross.
Yeah.
And it was the submission to to God's no, in a sense, to say, no, this is what you're going through, that is the reason that we worship him today, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
see, I love that he's committed to the mission, but he's open to different methodology, right? Like he's going, if there's another way, as if to say, God, we're like Father, like as Trinity, we, you, me, Spirit are all on the same page. We're bringing redemption to broken, sinful humanity, right? That is in dire need of rescue. Now, I know that we've discussed the cross. Now, if there's a different methodology to accomplish the mission, can we go back to the drawing board?
That's a good.
I say all this tongue in cheek, right?
I know,
of course.
Yeah, I know.
But
yeah, once again, though, I mean, I think the reason I think we can ask that question or even have this discussion is because they put it in the book.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this was Jesus's prayer. It's I don't know if is that the last prayer. That was his last prayer before the cross.
Before recorded? The cross, yeah. And then there's prayer on the cross.
Yeah, exactly,
but,
exactly. Interesting. So I mean, we've discussed this. 1 minute, please. Let's just make sure.
Just make sure we've exhausted all of our options.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, and this is highlighting this back to Psalm 132. It's highlighting the fact that the will that's most important is God's will.
Yeah,
and I think I could see how that gives comfort to people hiking this trail in times when they were going to rubble, right?
Yeah.
When they were hiking to, I think you brought that out, right? That they're coming to a city, and they're still on a pilgrimage to this temple that's now destroyed.
Yeah.
And they're saying, and maybe that's why this is here, is to say, but remember that there is a will that's still at work.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah. And that would be what, like I mentioned, Josh Moody in his book, Journey to Joy. That was really where he camped out for this whole Psalm, is that's the
Mhm.
point of it. And I'd say, yeah, that's definitely one of the points of it for
Mhm.
sure,
Mhm.
is that we can trust God's promise in the midst of any situation. And I love there's the way that what is like this promise is for, it's for abundance, satisfaction, salvation,
Yeah, that's
joy,
right.
victory. Like it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a good, really good promise
Yeah.
that God gives us. We know, verses 11 and 12 are about Jesus. And so these promises are yes and amen
Yeah.
in Jesus.
Absolutely. No, I like how you did that because this is a lot of content too.
Mhm.
But and you kind of brought that out. I mean, quickly, but that's still that is where our hope is.
Yeah.
That's where the yes is, because in the
Yes.
midst of admittedly many no's that we experience throughout life, that
There's a big yes.
we know that we can count on these yeses.
Absolutely.
That's super encouraging.
And I think isn't that what allows us to hold on
Mm.
in the face of the no, right? To hold on to Jesus, to hold on to faith in the face of the no is just the consistency and the faithfulness of God
Mm.
over and over and over again.
Hmm. So good. So good. What a cool psalm.
It really was. Like I said, this is the one I struggled with the most, and this is always the way it goes. You can tell me if you agree or not, but the ones I struggle with the most, going, what, God, what do you want to say through this?
Yeah.
God, what are you saying through this? What were you saying through this? What are you saying through this? What do you want to impart to your church through this? Those are usually the ones at the end where I end up going, man, Lord, I love this passage
Huh.
even more. It
Huh.
just comes to life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's when you and this is often the way I see it in any passage. You're kind of looking for the that main idea, but often there's a turning point somewhere, like right
Mhm.
there's something that just opens up the whole text,
Yeah.
right, that either pulls it all together, or like this one, and that's it's really that behind thing,
Yeah.
that thing that was going on behind the scenes that makes you go, oh, that makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
And it's great because this opens us up to more of Scripture, which is great. Which, I mean, such a pivotal covenant to kind of go back and
I
teach
like what you
about.
did there. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. To teach about
Yeah.
the Davidic covenant there.
Oh man,
And so he pivoted
he did.
to that.
He did. Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. Speaking of pivots, I want to pivot real fast because I have noticed that you might have brought a book.
Brought a book.
Dun dun dun. Yeah. Oh, this one stayed. Sometimes it changes. Oh, it's changing.
Yep. Love it.
Sometimes when you talk about it, it changes.
Do you want to put the sign
I could put it down there, but then I just can't see the book.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to do this and
All
say,
right.
Ryan brought a book, ladies and
did bring a book,
gentlemen. And so we're going to talk about the book.
All right. So usually I try to bring something that I've finished like this week. But I haven't finished anything this week. So
has it been a pivot week?
I am yeah. So I'm almost done with a book that I'll bring next time that I'm just loving. So
good.
But I decided I would go to my shelf and think about which book I would love to talk about that maybe our listeners, watchers haven't heard of. So here's the book that I'm sharing today. It's called Invitation to the Jesus Life by Jan Johnson.
Invitation to the Jesus Life. Okay. I love this, by the way, because this is one that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. The subtitle is Experiments in Christ Likeness. And so there's a lot of books that you can read about Jesus. And there's some really, really good books that you can read about Jesus. I mean, Philip Yancey's book on Jesus, John Ortberg, N.T. Wright. I mean, there's a number of scholars that have written prolific works on Jesus. This one is about some of the character traits of Jesus. And then what she does is she pairs those with some spiritual practices or disciplines that you can do in order to engage that for your life. And the thing that I love about it is it starts to push towards discipleship rather than just information. And I think part of our challenge in the digital information age is we tend to think that more information will be transformative. And I think we know that there's a lot of people that have made really, really bad decisions that they knew were wrong. Right? Like you go, well, like that person didn't do that because they were uninformed. They did it because they weren't formed. Right? And so like so what she tries to get to. Actually, that was good. I never
like that. I like that a lot. It's not because information is not the lack of information is not our problem.
Not usually.
Usually we know exactly what we're supposed to do. It's actually the will to do it. And so that we're not formed to have the will to actually do the right thing. That's good.
So at the end of each chapter, so if you get this book, which I'd recommend, and you read it, which I'd also recommend, I would encourage you to read it slowly, because at the end of each chapter, she has a section called experiments, and they're experiments in ways to actually take this characteristic of Jesus and ask God to make it more of a reality in your life, whether it's through reading a passage of scripture or engaging in a spiritual discipline, or this is a book I actually read through with a spiritual director. And so I would put like a star next to whichever one of these I was doing and like going to do in light of what we talked about. And then I did it, and we met and talked about it the next week.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm just noticing on the back, I wonder if she's still in Simi Valley.
Oh, I don't know.
That's what it says. It says her profile. We got to get her out.
She's great. So just in case you're interested, some of the things that she talks about is that Jesus is an attentive listener, that he's authentic in the sense of his true goodness and true realness. He's welcoming to the stranger. He's compassionate. He's tough but tender. He speaks the truth in love. He cheerfully goes the extra mile. He's purposefully intentional. He lives without fear. He's an exceptional teacher, hidden servant, dying to self, slow to speak, engaging artist, transcendent glory. And so there's some of these that you go, oh, that's like a little bit different than maybe some of the other books about Jesus that we've read. So anyway. There it is. I highly recommend it. It's a great book. It's sort of along the formation, transformation lines. And I think it would bless you. And if you pick it up and read it, I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, good. Man, just made my list. And because, this is the whole point of spiritual formation, which sounds so, I know like a lot of people, that sounds like this like weird thing.
Like what? Yeah.
Yes. Or it can sound very, some people I've heard say like very new agey, right? Or things like that. Well, this is very old agey, and it's really being formed into Jesus, which is very much our goal, very much a very biblical thing.
Yeah, I mean, Paul would say, "I'm in labor pains until Christ is formed in
me."
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So she's taking the like who Jesus is, his character, and then trying to ask the question, what would it look like for us to be formed more into his image? So
that sounds like something I'm interested in.
It's actually this is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Really cool.
It's top 10, but it's top 20.
Oof. That's good though. That's really cool. Yeah. Well, you guys, the Invitation to the Jesus Life by Jan Johnson. That's the book that Ryan brought. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Well, all right. Well, Ryan, you're off. It's baseball season. Well,
it is always.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's fall ball, and it's travel ball right now.
It is. Are we allowed to talk baseball when the Dodgers are playing the Padres?
I know. I think
when they win like they did last night.
Yeah, I know. I think it was like a day game today.
Was it? Yeah.
Maybe, or maybe I don't know. We'll see. Oh, maybe I was catching a highlight of the of last night or something, but I saw it in passing. Yes, the Dodgers are winning, and I feel like I have to apologize to all our San Diego fans. And it's just my upbringing. I was born in Dodger country, and you just can't take that out of you.
Would you say you were born into sin?
That's another topic of conversation. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
You got it.
I want San Diego to do well, except when they're playing the Dodgers.
There you go.
So there you go. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for listening. I know we're at a different time, and so some of you are going to be catching this later, and so we want to say thank you for joining in. As always, send us your questions, your comments, your advice, your criticisms, your encouragements, your gift cards. No, just kidding. No, your sorry. Yeah, don't do that. At questions@efcc.org, and we'd love to engage different topics, and we'd love to see where you're at. Reminds me, you're gonna be teaching somewhere next week.
I am. I'm up in Oregon starting Sunday afternoon.
Yes.
Sunday morning.
So, yes. Yeah. So we won't be here, at least not the two of us together. If I find someone and rope them into joining in, then I'll do that. But if not, we'll be back in a couple weeks with another edition. So thank you so much for joining us, and many blessings to you.
Yeah. God bless. See ya.